So digital disruption now is the norm. This is the norm of our life. This is what happens every single day. We can't change from it. And just to show you an example, these are digitally printed homes in Denmark. They print them in 24 hours and they cost $4,000. Digital disruption is happening in every single segment at every moment, and it's being combined, and there's about 5 or 6 technologies that are making this exponential. So even if I came to you 5 or 10 years ago and said that the biggest taxi company in the world wouldn't have any cars, the biggest hotel company in the world wouldn't have properties, the fastest growing bank today has no money. If I told you all this, all your data would be in a cloud, you'd probably kick me out. And that's only a 5-year difference. So think of what's happening now. So this slide is the perfect example of companies thinking their competition are fellow sharks. When your competition is not the fellow shark, it is going to be a digital disruption you don't see coming. It's going to take your lunch, and it's going to be impossible to kill. Because every time you try to bite at it, it reshapes, it turns into a tuna, it reshapes, it turns into something else. You cannot kill it. So when you're looking over your shoulder, it's not your competitors you should be looking at, it's digital transformation. That being said, let me say why everything's going digital. If I'm a VC or a bank, these are the basic rules of thumb. If you make a product, you're 1-time revenue. If you have a service, you're 2 times revenue. If you have a new technology that no one else has, you're 4 times revenue. If you have a network of connected customers, you are 8 times revenue. So even if I'm GM, would I take $1 billion and put it into making cars? When I can take $1 billion and buy Lyft and create $8 billion with it? This is what's happening. Everything is moving to digital because that's where the money is. So the old story, follow the money. So key technologies, there's lots of them. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but boy, oh boy, there's lots. And if I come up here next year, there'll be another 2 or 3, and this is what's happening. This is the pace of what's happening. So a wise man once said that innovation distinguishes a leader from a follower. And that is so true. I go into so many companies today, and I hear this over and over again. Oh, we can't take that risk. We're risk adverse. No, we can't fail. That's too risky. We can't do anything that's going to cause failure. If they listen to themselves, that means they're out of business. They're now a utility. Because if you don't take on any risk, if you don't allow your employees to take on any risk, you're dead. You're already a utility. So only creative people solve problems. This is the magic thing. Creative people solve problems, not technologies. And I'll come back to that at the end. So there is a wave coming. And it's not just a wave, it is a tsunami. This is the largest wave ever surfed in the world off of Portugal. It's roughly 30 stories tall. So if you know this wave is coming, it's a heck of a ride. If you don't know this wave is coming, it's going to wipe you out. And this wave is coming in 2020, 2 years from now. Just 2 years. So a common statement that a musician made that I love is people on the edge see these things, people in the middle see nothing. So if you're in the middle of your business, if you just work in your business and never on your business, you don't even know this wave is coming. And it is coming because it's already designed, planned, financed, and in place. So these are 2 graphs. The upper one is just to show innovation and where we are right now. So if you think innovation is moving quickly, we're about to go vertical. In 2 years, we're going vertical. And the other graph on the lower side is adoption rates of technologies. So you can see long ago, it took a long time to adopt the technology. Now you see the technology adoption rates almost vertical. And there's not one, but many of them now. So that curve looks a lot like this curve. And this curve is IoT devices. And this is the IoT count in 2020, 200 billion devices. We have 9 billion now. And IoT simply, the definition of IoT, all it does is connects the physical world with the cyber world. That's all IoT does. It allows the physical world to be measured and controlled by the cyber world. No other definition needs to happen. But think how many devices that's going to be. In the world today, there are 7 trillion sensors already. So these things have sensors on them. So that number is about to go through the roof. There will be so much data, you won't know what to do with it. And these IoT devices will not just sense. They'll sense, they'll think, and they'll act. And they'll act in milliseconds. They won't act without people controlling them because they'll be run by ML, machine learning, or AI. So that's in 2 years. So let me go through some of these technologies just so that you kind of have a basis of what's happening. So if you look at these technologies, it's not one, it's all of them. And what I'll try to do is run a little thread through them so you understand why they're all so important and how they're going to change our lives, whether it's in BIM or whatever business you're in or even your personal life. So the first one is 5G. 5G, the next way of communicating with your phones to somewhere, is not an evolution of 4G. It is a revolution. It's an absolute revolution. And the 5G white paper, the first idea, writing it on a piece of paper, was presented in 2014 in Vancouver. In 2020, it will be half the spectrum, half the backbone of Canada controlling signals. That's 6 years from I have an idea to running the world. This is the pace of how things are moving. So, first highlight just to remember of 5G, the pipeline is not 2x bigger, 3x bigger, it's 1,000 times bigger. So you can put video, you can put anything down it. It is incredibly big. The next thing to note is the maximum delay between a question and getting an answer in this new 5G is 1 millisecond. An Olympic athlete has a reflex of 14. So faster than you can react, the information's back. Faster than you can press your Google search, your button, it's back already. It is so fast that it allows AI, it allows other things. So when you think about autonomous driving, this is one of the drivers. Because you can put video through the air, and you can make reactions in under a millisecond. This is a very powerful thing. It uses 90% less energy. It's very energy efficient. So in your market, think of someone in construction can now put a chip for a couple dollars, a battery, little coin battery, and a switch, and tape it under the table, and that's your light switch. That lasts for 10 years. Why drag copper through walls? Makes no sense. You want to move this, you want to make it part of a chair, you want to do anything, all of this is available. And 5G from one antenna is able to do 100,000 devices in a square kilometer. It is just so radical, it's hard to imagine. And how many people know of 5G? How many people are designing around 5G that this new data is coming? Here's an announcement from Intel, just saying that every device that they make by holiday 2019 will have 5G, just in case you thought I was doubting it. So what does that also mean to your IT departments? Your IT departments now, why have a router? Why have a Wi-Fi? Everything is fast, secure, direct, going instantly. Are companies even thinking about this? Look at the size of IT departments. This is 2 years away. Am I scaring you yet? So the next one is the real-time cloud economy, and this takes a few things into account. So the first thing that we take into account is 90% of the world's data has been created in the last 2 years, but 60% of it is useless after 30 seconds. Because the event has happened. Someone's walked by that store. Something has already happened, so you can't use that data. So the trick is to get that data and use it instantly. You heard me say this already, that there's so many sensors in the world. And by 2020, the amount of data flowing around the world into the cloud is astronomical. Everybody's designing things in 3 phases now. So you have the cloud that everybody knows about, but most people don't know about the fog and the edge. So this is how a Tesla is designed. This is how Google Home is designed. This is the design of everything. So the edge is reflex, instant, automatic, do something. So your IoT device does something instantly. So when you say, okay, Google, or you say, Alexa, it instantly turns on, there's no doubt, or something jumps in front of your car, it instantly reacts, no thinking. The next level of design is fog. So in your Google Home, it will be the 20 most often words that you use. Volume up, volume down, mute, whatever. So inside that device is already taking place some smarts. So there's smarts that does voice recognition, that does AI, that does all blockchain, that does everything on the edge already and in the cloud. And only when you ask a really big, complicated question does it go to the cloud. So this is how companies now structure their data flow, look at how to do things. What do I need to do instantly? What am I going to do all the time? And what am I going to do once in a while? The whole world is moving towards open source. I heard it here a couple times. Very important, because if you're trying to compete with Sidewalk, with Apple, with Amazon, when you have open source, you have 10 million engineers, for instance, writing code around the world, writing little kernels, taking the bugs out, making sure it works, making sure the API is good. So you actually have 10 million employees, not one, not two. So the whole world, even the big boys now, have given up and they're moving towards open source because it's the way to move quickly. It's the way to share. It's the way to collaborate. And in this collaboration, there is a new economy really called the shared economy. So I go to all kinds of companies, large, small, and they go, well, I'm going to do AI, and I'm going to do blockchain, and I'm going to do this, and this, and this, and I'm going, I go to Google, who has $90 billion, and they don't do it themselves. How are you, a startup, going to do it yourself? Or how are you, a company, going to do it yourself? The point is to join ecosystems, find partners that really help you. Find a way of exchanging value with that partner. They'll do blockchain, you'll do the AI part, but somewhere in the middle you'll meet these things because you can't do it yourself. It is impossible. So if you close your walls, if you think you can do it yourself, you will fail. So machine learning and AI. You know, this is the scary thing. I actually don't call it artificial intelligence. I call it actionable intelligence because there's nothing artificial about it. And it is moving from hindsight, what happened, to predicting it's going to happen. When Maclean's magazine went out and asked CEOs in Canada, 41% already said that they had AI projects planned. 41% of all the companies. So I ask you, have you? These same companies said all of them, 80% would be using, 80% would be using it in their daily business by 2020. This technology gives you twice generally the margin. I have customers that make bathroom wall dividers that are using AI. AI is everywhere and needs to be used. So AI is nothing about algorithms, it's all about data. Making sure you have the right data sets, making sure you have the right unbiased in your data set, and these decisions can happen quickly. And let me give you an example so you see what actionable intelligence really is. You have an important motor somewhere in your company. It has a 5G sensor on it. It's starting to heat up and vibrate. So the sensor sends a signal to say, I'm this hot, I'm vibrating this much. That's machine learning. The AI now looks at it and goes, well, based on that, it's going to fail in 3 weeks. Let me go out to my ERP, Oracle SAP. Let me order that new motor. Hey, that new motor takes 4 weeks to get in. So if it's a 4-week lead time, I'm going to slow down my current motor by 20%. I'm going to slow down all my inventory coming in by 20%. I'm going to notify all my customers that their shipments are going to go down by 20%. I'm going to look, hey, when Susan fixes this motor, it lasts for 1 year. When Bill fixes it, it lasts for 2 days. I better schedule Susan. This happens in a millisecond. And I can take you all to companies that do that today in Ontario. This is not pie in the sky. This is happening. So you need to get understanding and get aboard this. Industry 4.0, as we weave that thread through it. And we've all seen how industry has moved on from mechanization to Henry Fords to robots. But Industry 4.0 is really creating a cyber, that word again, a cyber model of what you do normally and looking all around. So let me, oh, that one slide too fast. Let me give you an example. So here's a crane that loads ships. This crane costs $15 million. They sell one every 10, 20 years. Their profit margin is 40%. And it loads it all day long, and that's the money the crane company makes. Now let's take that crane and let's connect it to a computer, and just on that crane put a little device that weighs the canister. So as that canister comes in, they weigh it. Knowing its weight, it can sell that information to Canada Customs or whatever to say, hey, this approximately weighs this. Then, in the computer, it has a cyber model of the ship. As it loads the containers into the ship, it now balances the weight of the ship. By balancing the weight of the ship, that ship saves 20% fuel crossing the ocean. That's a little over $100,000. So the crane company charges $3 a canister to do this. Can you imagine how many canisters a crane loads in a week, in a month? So they're making more than $5 million pure profit every month for doing nothing. They only connected a computer to the crane. So you need innovative people to look outside your business, see where the value is in the chain, and how can I take advantage of it? And that is 4.0, and that's happening all around us everywhere. Blockchain, this is the one that kind of scares everybody. Blockchain shouldn't scare you. And let's see, in Ontario, there are at least 100 blockchain companies I know working on at least 500 projects. They are everywhere. They're doing food supply for eggs. They're doing gas futures at the TSX. Blockchain is already everywhere. And if this is a Canadian crowd, let me ask you a quick question. What is the most valuable Canadian startup ever? Ever. Nothing comes close. It is Ethereum. Ethereum incorporated in 2017, so it's 1 year old. It's now worth $35 billion. That is faster than Google. That is faster than Amazon. That is faster than any company out there. It started here in Toronto. Does anybody know them? This is how fast things are moving. As my mic comes in and out. So blockchain, you only need to know two things. Blockchain equals trust. And personally, I don't trust the bank. I don't trust my government. I don't trust my retailers. I don't trust anybody anymore. So there's an enormous void that blockchain has to fill because it creates trust. How does it create trust? It makes an immutable record that can never, ever be changed, and that immutable record is better than military encryption. And by the way, blockchain is not Bitcoin. Separate those two in your mind. And that record is shared on millions or hundreds of thousands of computers, depending whether you have a private, a hybrid, or a public blockchain. So this, unfortunately, will also get rid of all the middlemen. This is the disruptor to Uber. This is the disruptor to Airbnb. This is the disruptor to everybody in insurance, everybody in banking, because you don't need anybody in the middle to do business. This is the disruptor. That being said, let me just do a brief explanation after this slide of blockchain. So my personal view of the world is this. In the 1400s, there were the knowledge companies, printing books, printing magazines, sharing knowledge. In the 1800s, we moved to manufacturing. In the 1900s, we worked online, which brought people closer together. But in the 2000s, we will be remembered as trust companies. And my personal belief is blockchain will be bigger than the internet. Given time, it will be bigger. So simply, how does it work? In your kind of field, if I had a ledger, and this ledger was about a house or a building, and in that ledger, I wrote down house was sold to this owner this year, this type of improvement was made, this was sold, this building contract was done. Somebody erases a line, nobody knows. Nobody knows if somebody fudges a number or does something. In blockchain, when you take that first line, you write it, you encrypt it, and you take the key of it and you put it in the second line. And then when you write the second line, you encrypt it and put the line in the third, fourth, fifth. So as you're doing this, you create this chain of encryption. So if somebody tries to remove a line, the whole chain falls apart up and down. You cannot alter something once you write it there. This is really important. And then on top of that, you can also share it on millions of computers. So even if you tried to hack it, you'd have to be able to hack all of those keys somehow at the same time, and then you'd have to hack a million computers at the exact same time, and some of those computers are off. It's impossible to hack blockchain. It's the most brilliant, secure network out there. And if you share it on lots of computers, your company's open data, they'll have instant information. If you're putting in your ledger, CRA has it instantly. If you're putting something into your supply chain, instantly everybody shares it. And blockchain is used in the supply chain of Toyota, Porsche, P&G today. So it's out there and it's very powerful. So picture in your industry that somebody makes a door frame. You scan that QR code on the door frame, you get the entire lineage of that door frame. Where did that iron ore come from? When was it smelted? Where was it rolled? What day? Who then formed it? How long has it been sitting there? Everything, you have the perfect lineage of everything that nobody can fiddle with. Nobody can change. So you have trust. And if you have a competitor in your business that's not using blockchain, trying to sell roughly at the same price, you're dead. Because if I know the lineage, I have the trust, I will always go to that customer. Trust is important. So this is how blockchain is being done. And if you need blockchain in your business, please join some blockchain groups. Come to OCE, let us educate you. Blockchain is really important in supply chain, medical records, fundraising. And let me, if you go on the web and look at something called e-ID.me, that is the government already of Ontario has put our IDs on the blockchain. So they'll announce it. It's announced, but they'll roll it out sometime in February or in the winter, depending on the government. I can't predict that. But you will no longer need an OHIP card. You will no longer need a driving license. You will no longer need an age of majority card. You are you. You have an app, and they can say, who are you? You can give your name. A picture will come up from MOT. A piece of data will come up from a medical record. A piece of data comes from here. So nobody can hack it because it's all over the place and shared. And you no longer need a piece of paper to prove you're you. So think how powerful this is in the world, and think how many people think governments move slow. The government's moving a lot faster than I think most of you right now in this area. And think of that for medical records too. Which needle did you have? What day? Nobody seems to know. Why is this? This is silly. So everything's going to start being blockchain. So working on Scott's example, because Scott said Moore's Law. Moore's Law is going to start affecting all of them. I worked in semiconductors for almost 30 years, and Moore's Law is that technology doubles roughly every 2 years and prices go in half. So that equates to a 41% improvement every year of what I had to do. For 30 years, I worked 41% improvement. So when I go to companies that say, oh, we're trying to improve by 16% this year or 3% this year, I laugh. Because I know 41% is sustainable and you can do it through culture. So using that great example of a car, let me move it down to the building. So if skyscrapers were to follow Moore's Law, the average skyscraper would have 13.5 million people in it. It would be 35 times higher than Mount Everest, and it would cost less than $1,000. So if you think that's funny, you'll be following Moore's Law, because data, semiconductors, the technology world follows Moore's Law. You can't avoid it now. You're being sucked into it. This is the speed of business now. So it's scary because it's moving so fast, but I also try to tell people innovation is like a diet. You cannot lose 30 pounds overnight, but you can make a plan, because you'll die. You can make a plan to lose a pound every 2 months, half a pound here. And guess what? In a year, you've lost 20 pounds. So don't think of this as some enormous thing that I have to get over. it's a journey, and you start the journey, and you start with the creative people, and things will happen. There are also 9 different types of innovation. Not 1, 9. So when you start going down the innovation curve, get a professional. Talk to someone who knows what they're doing. Get on the edge. Find people that know all the different types of innovation, how to foster this innovation, what to do with this information. And I will tell you, when I go to Google or I go to Amazon and I talk to somebody there and I say, what's your strategy? They look at me like deer in the headlight. I have no idea what the strategy of Amazon is. But if I ask them what's their culture, oh yeah, we got to be day one, we got to do this, we got to do this, we got to do this. So I will tell you, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Don't worry about an innovation strategy, work on your culture. Creativity solves problems, not technology. And if you get ahead of the curve, you kind of make the business. It's the Uber model. Do it and then ask for forgiveness. So 2 last slides. One is, I will come here in a year's time to talk to you again, and I'll talk to you about 6G, which is 2 years after 5G, and 7G, which is 3 years after 6G, and 7G is interplanetary communication, and 6G is using, I will thrill you with all the things happening in technology, but in the end, you cannot keep up with technology. So you must create a creative culture. You must allow people to make risks. They must have this strategy of either you're right or you've learned. You must pivot. You must follow what small companies do and how they do things. You must link yourself to small companies so you get this inspiration if there is no creative culture in your company. So please, if you leave with one thought, your thought is build a creative culture. Before you start thinking of ideas, build a creative culture. And then I'm going to give you the 5% checklist, because when you walk out that door, you will remember about 15% of what I said, and by the time you get home, it's 5%. So let me give you the 5% you need to remember. So the first one, I'm repeating myself, but I'm driving it home. Build the creative culture. Over and over again, I will keep saying that. Customer trust is vital. You're going to be changing things. So you must invite customers, let them be part of the process, because if they don't trust what you're doing in your change, it's not going to work. Trust is vital. And the technology pace is exponential now. So really start to join groups like Sandbox at IBI to see all these new ideas and what's being fostered there. Go to a medical innovation area. Go to an automotive innovation area. You will be blown away at what's happening with cars. Yesterday I was talking at a connected car conference. There was 160 customers there, but that's car to infrastructure. So that's infrastructure to infrastructure. Start being involved with those to see what's happening. How does a connected car do this, and why does it do this? And start learning that 30 countries in the world have banned ICE in 2030. ICE is internal combustion engines, so that's gas or diesel. Banned. You can't sell any more ICE cars in 2030. That includes Germany, China, UK. These are not little places. So if Germany's not planning on using gas cars, ICE cars in 2030, you're not following the curve. You need to connect to people that know the dots and see what's happening, because if you're still making infrastructure and buildings and parking lots for ICE cars, 20 years from now, you're not going to need them. And I can do a whole speech on that if you'd like, because that shocks people the most. This is my email. So I'm at OCE, and Scott mentioned that we roughly invest $400 million into the economy every year. We're a not-for-profit. We're funded by both private companies and by public companies. And we are the ones that build this infrastructure. We build this. So I'm happy to say that the numbers just came out from CBRE. And in the Toronto area, Kitchener-Waterloo to Toronto, 29,000 jobs were created in the high-tech sector. That is more than, second place was Seattle at 8. Third place was Austin at 8. So it's more than anywhere in the world, and we have now the biggest high-tech center in the world, because last year was 22,500 people. So there's a lot of really bright people doing innovation, startups in every single area you can imagine. Take advantage of it. reach out to OCE, go to some meetups. Thank you.